Hello and welcome. I'm your host, author Ryan M. Oliver, and this is the Mighty Books Podcast. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of the Mighty Books Podcast. Today with me, I have Mr. Mick Heyman. Mick, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great, Ryan. Great to be here. Thank you very much.
Yeah, of course. So we're here to talk about your book, and looks like you got a kind of selection of publications too to chat about, which is pretty cool. So what's the topic or what's the title of your book?
It is Mellow Your Money, How to Surf the Market and Build Wealth Without Stressing Yourself Out.
Nice. All right, that's a pretty good, that's a nice like 30-second synopsis right there too. You know, like the elevator pitch.
Exactly.
That's kind of a perfect elevator pitch. Like even pre-elevator, like you just push the button. Now you got time to go deep dive into it. So, can you give us a little background on your history in dealing with money and finances?
Sure. I've been actually in the business for a little over 40 years. Got it in
Nice.
1980 and just kind of worked for a small investment firm, worked for an institutional investment firm, and then moved to San Diego about 20 years ago
Wow.
and went back to managing individuals and a very small firm. It's just me.
Mhm.
And yeah, 3 or 4 years ago, just thought, my dream was always to write something. And I've been off and on writing things that, short pieces, and thought maybe I could put some of my stories together into a book.
Oh, very
So
cool.
that's what started all that, and
Yeah.
it was a great experience.
Yeah, very cool. So what was the tipping point to actually say to take the first step into actually writing the book? What was that? Was there a motivation that kind of struck
I
you?
think it was a combination of things, but one thing with it just kind of, again, got to a tipping point. It was hearing all the misinformation and sometimes useless information that was out there, I think confusing people, stressing people out. And I found that there's so little out there to actually help people in what I consider helping people. There's tons of books on investing. And so, if you Google, if there's just, hundreds, thousands maybe.
Yeah.
But what I didn't find is things that would help people in times of crisis or in everyday managing their funds so that they wouldn't have the stress that occurs if you're paying attention to social media or the headlines. And so I thought there are so many experiences I had that taught me over time to relax more. And the way I learned was through experiences and through stories. And I thought, as opposed to writing a textbook, I would write a book of my stories, kind of a memoir type of thing. How did I learn about the market? Sometimes there were stories about me, my misadventures in the market that taught me about investing or taught me about life lessons. And sometimes they were life lessons that actually taught me not just about my life, but about investing. So I thought, put them together into a group of little chapters and see what would happen. And so that's basically the book.
So what kind of tips and what kind of misinformation are you trying to lead people away from? What anything specific come to mind?
Well, one of the biggest things I think is the having to do something all the time.
Hmm.
Every day we're seemingly there's another piece of information that's maybe it's an inflation report or an employment report, or somebody's out there telling you that there's going to be a terrible recession or there won't be a recession.
Right.
And what do you do with all this stuff? There's cryptocurrency, and people are telling you how to make money doing this or that, and
Oh man.
and which I would equate with sports betting. It might be fun, but that's not long-term investing. And so often I think that the way to make money over time is to do it slowly, to build, to practice just sound savings and long-term investing. And
Yes.
so few people out there that you're hearing about are telling you ignore the recession prediction, ignore this.
Hmm.
And so that's the biggest tip I think is to, try to shut down the noise and keep with a plan. But in order to do that, you've got to deal with your emotions. And so
That's a
that
fact.
was another thing that I had to learn very, deeply in my life, because we're all dealing with different emotions, whether it's from our parents or other things that happen in our life. And
Yeah.
if we're not dealing with our own specific unique emotion or risk tolerance, we're going to make mistakes.
Hmm.
And so that too is something I wanted to pass along in the book and show how I dealt with different emotions, sometimes in a not a good way, but at least taught me, this is what you need to do to move on.
Yeah, yeah. Managing your expectations as well is something that I think a lot of young folks are needing to kind of grab hold of. For instance, I've got in my office, I'm the older of I'm what, second oldest of the entire group. I'm in my mid 30s. Our lead is in his mid to late 40s. And then everyone underneath me is early 30s. And then we have one guy who's 23.
Yeah,
Very responsible guy, hardworking, good dude, but he's listened to our conversations about, having a house, a car, money in the bank, going on trips. He's like, man, I really want to just get there. I'm like, whoa, 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 whoa. Chill, okay? It
yeah,
takes a long time of steady steps increasing of earning, building the wealth, earning, putting your time in, investing slowly, nothing too crazy or catastrophic to get to that comfortability that you want. It takes time. You kind of got to be a little uncomfortable to later be comfortable, but you got to put the work in now to lay the groundwork for your future. You don't get a forest overnight. You have to plant the seeds first, wait a while, and then eventually the trees sprout up. It's how it goes. So when you're talking to people or in your book, do you kind of talk about like building that patience and understanding this is going to take a while? It's a marathon, not a sprint.
no, absolutely. You could write a chapter of the book. That's
Got
exactly it.
a
And
little experience, some good, some bad.
exactly.
Yeah.
And we all do. And that is how we learn. And at 23, hopefully you can start savings, but on the other hand, you're going to make mistakes along the way.
Oh yeah.
And
Oh yeah.
and so the other part of the book is to try to emphasize that when we do make these mistakes, which invariably happen, treat it as a tuition payment.
Yes.
That there's a great investor who wrote a amazing book about 100 years ago, Jesse Livermore. The internet will be filled with quotes from Jesse Livermore, but that's one of them, is that every time he made a trading mistake, it was a tuition payment. And if you ignore
Uh,
it, you're going to keep paying that tuition over and over again. And so it's not just investment lessons, it's life
no.
lessons.
Yeah.
And
Yes.
sometimes we get a review in a class, which we don't really want to have. But what you say is absolutely right. The patience, knowing how to have a relative victory,
Yeah.
you don't have to be the best investor every year. You don't have to have the
No.
greatest stock or be out there with your friends bragging about what you did or didn't do.
Right.
It's more the small victories, and
Hmm.
that's hard in America here. We're
Just
taught to win, to
yeah.
always be the best.
Yes. Always be the best and then make that quick cash. We want to make that quick cash and be a fast millionaire overnight. And it's just not reality. It's just simply not reality at all.
It
So
it hitting the ball down the middle of the fairway,
yeah.
not swinging so hard.
Yeah.
That's when you get older you can do that, but as a
Yeah.
young person, it's hard.
It
And
is. It's
that is what you have to learn over time.
Yeah, I've been at least we're trying to instill some of this into our kids. And when you're younger, you just don't have that, you see that apple, you can see it, I want that apple. But it takes so much time to develop that foundation. We're really trying hard to instill like, hey, if you want this way down the road, because this is something to shoot for, a comfortable living, being able to explore the world and uh, afford things, which is kind of nice, but retire in comfort, or even more so if you're lucky. It's taking that time and really going, getting some kind of education, learning, whether it's by experience or going to school, depending on what you're wanting to do, and really playing that long game is something that's I feel like is a lot harder for people, and and being okay also with making mistakes, like you said, and then being able to kind of, okay, I went 2 steps forward, I made a mistake, I need to go 2 steps back, and then deviate to a different section. That is such a hard thing for people to admit they screwed up, turn around, go back to square zero, and then go again. So, did you have any experience, any stories like that in your book?
Oh, absolutely. In fact, I credit, the fact that I'm still in the business with making those mistakes and then using them as learning lessons.
Hmm. Oh yeah.
The first, I started very slowly, but eventually there were four partners, and sometimes you worked with the marketing guy, and sometimes you worked with the client guy, and then of course eventually worked with the research guy.
Yeah.
And I remember it was back in the early 80s, and the market had just all of a sudden out of the blue taken off. And I did really well for a year or so. And we had done well, but we didn't own some of the more aggressive cyclical companies.
Hmm.
And some of our clients were going like, "Yeah, you guys are too conservative, and you ought to try, when are you going to buy something fun?" And so the research guy told myself and another young guy, "Hey, check out some of these stocks and see, and when they correct a little bit, we'll maybe step into them."
Hmm.
Well, as you know, the market never cooperates with you, and so
I like children.
it's like it knows. It knows that what you're trying to do.
Oh
And
yeah.
so we each found a couple of stocks, and
Hmm.
the year I think it was 1984. The market started off, and instead of correcting, it boomed forward.
Hmm.
And I won't take total responsibility here. These other guys have been in the business for many, many years. Everyone thought the same thing. We got
Hmm.
to do something.
Yeah.
We can't let another year go by and not buy some of these aggressive stocks. So it was Mick and Larry, go study tonight, and tomorrow we're going to buy some of your stocks.
Oh
And
shit.
I'm telling you, that next day was so exciting. We're buying, I had a steel stock and a paper stock. I must have been a little into Springsteen back then. But I was like hardcore economy, and we're buying these stocks, and for that day, the market was great. The stocks were up, and we looked like heroes. And unfortunately, that was the peak.
Uh,
That day, literally, you could have circled and said, from that day for the next 6 months, the market went down. My
uh,
steel stock, I don't think ever did recover. Eventually became one of the larger bankruptcies
oh
in
no.
the 80s. And we, of course, we're going to lunch, Larry and me, and we're going like, yeah, how could those guys have done that to us? But had we just, wallowed in blame and that kind of thing, it would have led to maybe another career, or it sure wouldn't have helped us. But what we did was really go back and say, what did we do wrong?
Yeah.
And really look at it. And the other thing it did was show me that there were parts of, there were aspects of looking at stocks that I never even considered, which was
Hmm.
the chart itself. And so it plunged me into looking at technical analysis and looking at the, how stocks act, and combining that with looking at, what a company does and how it's valued. And this whole combination of looking at a stock three different ways was something our firm had not done before.
Hmm.
And
Okay.
so it gave me this perspective of how to look at a company and really get to know it before you step in. And how
Interesting.
often do you might go to a party or something, someone talks about a company and immediately gets you excited about
Oh
it,
yeah.
and
Yeah.
off you go. And so it taught me patience, and anyway, led to a lot of education. So that's an example of, at least early in my career, kind of figuring out, how to, how to look at your life and not just plunge into despair
Yeah.
anytime you do
It
something wrong.
it's interesting how you said kind of look at it from several angles. It kind of resonates with me like um almost like a relationship with a stock because when you think about you get to know a person like you said at a party, okay, you meet someone at a party, they seem really cool, they're really fun, you guys hit it off, get great chemistry, then down the road you're like there's something wrong with this person. There's they have some issues. There's some great qualities, but there's some not so great qualities here. And you kind of over time, you can see that this is going to be a long-term situation, good friendship, whatever, or it's going to be we're acquaintances, so that's about as good as it's going to get right there. And looking at from physical, emotional, mental perspectives, almost. It's just that's kind of where
Well,
my
it's
mind went
funny you
to.
say that because that whole concept of I actually have a chapter of kind of that brings to mind the whole concept of how you learn from relationships. And because
Interesting.
I've had other clients and myself that have that relationship with a stock that they may have held on to for a long time, and
Ah,
they cannot part ways with it. It's
hmm.
so hard to do that. And it reminded me of a story, and it happened not that long ago. I was divorced about 7 or 8 years ago,
Hmm.
and the first woman I met, I bumped into her at a in a grocery store, and I didn't even recognize her. But this beautiful woman comes by and says, "Hey, I think I know you." Well, I'm not the type of guy that has that happen very often anywhere.
All
And
right.
I'm going like, yeah, we must know each other, but as we're talking back and forth, I realized we had actually volunteered together in school with my son many years ago, and we
Oh,
actually did know each other. And I'm thinking, well, this is like, heaven looking down upon me and giving me this amazing, woman to meet. She happened to be also divorced, and so we get together and it looks like it's just magical,
right.
running off and going on great vacations and everything else. And but we really were very different.
Yeah.
But that illusion that happens at the beginning gets you stuck and you can't, it's so hard to break out of that.
Yes.
And
Yes.
eventually she pulled the plug. And though it was kind of a heartbreak, I knew that that relationship was not built for the long term.
Yeah.
But you get so sucked into that first illusion.
Yeah.
And once you get that, everything happens, kind of confirms that. And think
Hmm.
of somebody who may own cryptocurrency or some other thing, and everything they hear confirms this is the right way to go. And yet, do they really know anything about it? If
No.
they do, they're smarter than me. Because because I'm not saying it's done spectacularly, Bitcoin and such, but if someone explains how is this really valuable, I've not heard the answer to it yet.
I'm so glad you said that because I've tried to understand cryptocurrency and I just can't. I've tried people try to, teach me it, and it doesn't get it. I don't get it. It's like almost like video game money. It to me, that's what it feels like. It just feels like fake money. But anyway, do you go into crypto much in your book?
I do not because
Okay.
it kind of I think I refer to it a little bit
I
here and there.
figured that
It
much.
was
Yeah.
kind of at the edges of when I was writing.
Yeah.
And so it's been more in talking to people like you and saying,
Yeah.
hey, this is not new. We had Beanie Babies in the 90s, if you recall,
I
that people
do.
are putting away for their college education for kids.
Yes.
So and when that ended, you're thinking, well, that was crazy. That'll never happen again. And back in the 1500s, I believe the Dutch were buying tulip bulbs and trading tulip bulbs as if you could buy a house with certain tulip bulbs. And so you're thinking, well, those people, that was 500 years ago or 600, whatever.
Right.
But the human emotion does not change. And
No.
our ability to leap onto something, whether it be something like crypto or a particular stock. I
Yes.
mean, think of the late 90s with some of these internet companies that were basically just people who created something out of their garage. It went for, infinite a number of dollars and then collapsed 3 or 4 years later.
Right.
And who knows, maybe crypto at some point will turn into something. And if it does, we've got what I would urge people to is if it does, you've got time.
Yeah.
You didn't
Yeah.
have to buy Amazon back in the late 90s.
No.
You could have waited 10 or 15 years to see, oh, this is a real company. Or think of Apple.
Yeah.
Was around a long time before iPods came out, or
Yes.
eventually, smartphones.
Hmm.
But patience is not a bad thing.
No, no, it
So
is not.
there's plenty of time. And if you look back, there have been stocks even in the last year, like Nvidia,
Yeah.
where you actually know what they do, that have done about as well as Bitcoin. And so you don't always have to jump on the newfangled thing that you don't understand.
Yeah, I like the whole track record thing. There's actual like historical data to say that here's where they're tracking. It's a slow grind, but this is where they're tracking. They're dependable. To me, that is a I think of that with cars. Is this car going to get me from point A to point B for the max amount of years? Yes, I want that one. Like
Yeah,
I don't
yeah.
care about the style. It has four wheels, an engine, and it can run. Sweet. I'm game. We're golden. It's cool. I got to change the oil every once in a while, add some gas. Tires got to be replaced every X amount of years. Awesome. Low maintenance, and it gets me where I need to go. Happy day. Other than that, I don't need anything flashy. I don't. And I want, give me the Carfax. I want all the information I can get on, especially money. Oh my God. It's a foundation of households. It's, can be very, very dangerous conversation starters with spouses and all that fun stuff. It'd be very stressful. So, since your book is, how to surf the market and build wealth without stressing yourself out, what are some tips to help people who are reading to not stress themselves out about the market and money?
So the first thing I'd say is, I'm sure there are varied listeners on there, people who are at the beginning,
Oh yeah,
people who may have just inherited money,
yeah,
or people who, so all ages, can benefit from kind of looking at how can I de-stress my money.
hmm
But if you were at the beginning of things, I urge people to do the basics. Make sure you have money in an emergency fund to take care of yourself before you start going off and investing.
yeah,
So that to me, I would urge people that, have some money put away that is not dependent on the stock market.
yes,
Because as I found out, the market never cooperates when you need to. And when you need the new tire, don't
uh-huh,
be trying to sell stock for it. The second thing is to understand your own unique risk tolerance, because some of us can take more risk than others.
yes,
Once you get into stocks, what could you lose before you get scared?
right,
Because when the market goes down, it's usually an opportunity to keep at it, keep
hmm
investing. If you're on a monthly plan of investing a little bit every month, the market going down shouldn't be a bad thing.
yeah,
That means you're buying at lower prices. So it's
yes,
not a but if you have too much in stocks,
hmm
you're not going to look at it as an opportunity. You're going to go, oh, whoa, now I'm worried about the recession or about some other thing that they're talking about.
yeah,
And so don't go over your skis too far. Sure you understand how much could I lose, and you can for some people it's having half in stocks.
hmm
For people you can have three quarters.
hmm
And it almost doesn't matter with your age. Obviously younger people can have potentially more risk tolerance.
yes,
But if you're a younger person and really would get nervous if things went down, don't be afraid to, take stocks back a little bit
yeah,
and make sure it's not too much for you.
okay, okay. Well,
So I
that's
think that's an important thing. And then the other thing is sometimes, this might sound way too conservative what we're talking about for people. Is, oh my God, this is, I like to hit the ball hard. I want to take some risk. Well, do it, but have it be a part of your plan.
yeah,
You don't have to make it be the whole thing. And so my uncle learned that at some point. He and my grandpa always used to argue. My grandpa was the hit the ball down the middle of the fairway. My uncle would hit it as hard as he could. And he's going like, I don't understand. You have no fun in life. And my grandpa says, well, you have a lot of fun, but no money. It was back and forth. And what my uncle was a good gambler,
yeah,
but he eventually realized, and this was during the tech debacle in the early 2000s, that what he should have is some boring investments and then let himself take some risk. And he eventually made a ton of money in Apple and some of these other tech companies.
yeah,
But it was always on this, and it was always a portion of his money that was going up with that fund,
yeah,
as opposed to the whole thing.
yep.
So if you really want to buy cryptocurrency, you just can't resist it. Just don't make it be your whole portfolio. My
Facts.
son is actually been a great saver. He started working about 3 or 4 years ago. But every weekend, he and his buddies do the $5 parlays with the sports betting.
Hmm.
Now, is that terrible to bet, 5, 10, 20 bucks and have some fun with your buddies? No, it's
No.
fine. But don't make that be, what you're betting your retirement on.
Right. Yeah. Don't make it a habit. That's for sure. I mean, I look at that when I was first coming of age and can go to like casinos.
Yeah,
Okay, casinos were exciting. They're open all the time. This is great. You can make some money from there just by playing games. Whoa, this is awesome. But I equate because I hate gambling. I have my wife tells me I have a negative aura around gambling. I walk towards someone, if they're up, they just crash when I show up. I'm like, nope, I don't gamble. I just don't do it. So like I'll do penny stocks occasionally. We'll go to the casinos and we'll just play for as long as I can. I say I have $30, $50, whatever, and I'll use $50 and I'll burn that $50. That's basically me going to the movies. It's essentially entertainment at that point. That's all it is. So as long as, I've always looked at my bills as, okay, I'm the first person who needs to get paid. So when I get paid, immediately I put X amount of dollars. It's already set in my budget in the savings account. That's how much money I have. Everything else, you go to bills, you pay the house, and then anything after that, you got wiggle room. Sweet. Now we can invest, even if it's $5. Cool. You're playing, having fun with it. If you lose it, it's $5. You gain a little bit. Cool. I got some extra money. So there's really no loss in doing that. And when you do that, it's a little more fun. You want to do it more often.
absolutely. And I loved your concept. In fact, I had a client telling his grandkids the exact same thing. Pay yourself first.
Yeah. Yeah.
You got to pay your rent, you got to pay utilities, but
Yeah.
but put that money away
Hmm.
so that you're not worried about at the end of the month, oh, now I don't have any money to save.
Yeah.
Make sure you put something away first. And then, like you say, have some fun with if that's the kind of person you are, you want to take some risk. That's part of life. And and when it does work out, be willing to take a little bit off the table too. Because
Yes.
I've seen even seasoned investors get sucked into, they bought something that really ran crazy. Now they think they're smart and they think that, oh my gosh, this is, it pays to just, even when it's a good company, there's no reason for it to go down.
Yeah.
Take a little off the table here and there
Right.
and put it towards your other investments.
Yeah.
And we've all learned that, what goes up, out of the
Mm.
blue will, have some issues.
Oh,
And
yeah.
examples of that almost every day in the market.
Oh, I'm sure there are. I'm not a close observer of the market, but I've definitely got some buddies who are, and they'll tell me, "Oh, this is great. Oh, that one didn't work out so well. It went, they put $100 in there and it's down. Though this one did pretty well." So it's just very interesting how the markets, what influences the markets to go up and down, just for those who don't really know.
Well, certainly at any given moment, it can be some emotional thing.
Hmm.
And interest rates, to me, still drive the market. When interest rates go down,
Hmm.
even if there's bad news,
Yeah.
imagine this during COVID, imagine if you knew the answer.
Hmm.
You knew at the beginning of 2020 that there was going to be this terrible pandemic.
Hmm.
We'd have all these terrible deaths. The economy would shut down. People would be at home the whole year. The economy would be a debacle. You just sold everything
Yeah.
if you knew that headline. And yet, even though the market spiked down in March, at the end of the year, the market was up 15%. If you had just closed your eyes and done nothing, you would have made money.
Hmm.
And so what really drives the market is sometimes unpredictable. What
Hmm.
you know is that if you're in America and things tend to work out, the market tends to work out. The market goes up about 80% of the time, 4 out of 5 years.
Yeah.
And so try not to predict too much. And when pick whatever allocation you like in stocks.
Yeah.
And when it goes up, take it down a little bit. When it
Hmm.
goes down, take it up a little bit.
Yeah.
And so be more of a mechanic. And what you'll find is that when the headlines are at their worst and it tries to scare you,
Uh,
that's the time that you tend to, a good time to buy stocks.
yeah.
I compared this when I had an uncle that used to come over our house, and every once in a while you'd hear him at the door, and you go, "Oh crap!" And he'd grab you by the ears, and and it was always cry uncle, cry uncle. I can still remember him yelling at me,
Yeah.
and eventually you cried uncle. Well, in 1987, the market had what they call Black Monday. The
Hmm.
market dropped 22% in one day.
Whoa.
Now, I just saw the other day the market was down a couple of percent, and the headline was markets plunge. And I'm thinking, that's not a plunge. That's just, I mean, it's not a great day, but that's not 22% in one day.
No.
And that was horrible. And I remember one of the partners just at the end of the day trying to sell anything he could. I mean, it was at a low. And I'm thinking, he's crying uncle.
Uh-huh.
Mean, that and so it's not that you ignore that emotion,
Right.
but just remember when you're really scared, that's telling you you're probably closer to the bottom than you are at top.
Yeah.
And
Yes.
so it's not like emotions should be don't not pay attention to your emotions, but don't always do the thing that it's pushing you to do. And
Facts.
so, when you're feeling real good about something, I can't tell you how many times I thought, oh, look at my portfolio and look at this and look at that. That was like a sign, something
Mur
bad.
Murphy's Law's like, hold my beer.
Exactly.
Gotta drop this real quick, attach an anvil to that thing, and let's see what happens. It reminds me of the '08 recession we had, and I was working at the school districts as a uh, basically a substitute teacher or a reading tutor at the time. And I remember walking in the staff lounge. I wasn't a teacher, I was a tutor. And so I remember hearing the conversations amongst the teachers, and all of them were very worried about their retirements, their investments, and they were all looking to do the sell thing, the panic sell. One teacher walked in, I remember fifth grade teacher, Mr. Johnson. He came in and he like addressed the staff room like you would a classroom of panicking kids. He does to the teachers. He's like, okay, you are not going to sell everything because yes, you might have lost money. However, you might have to add another 5 years of working. However, the money, the markets will bounce back. And once he kind of reassured them, and it's like, this is historically, like you said, it goes up. And then, yes, we have dips. It came up. Did they lose? Yeah, they lost some money, but they at least did better if they held on to the money versus if they had just thrown it away and tried to bail out as they were.
That's such a true thing, and I've seen it. I would say there's one caveat, and that's one reason to be diversified.
Hmm.
And it's really important, I think, that as you're investing, even if you're really into it and you're studying stocks, be diversified because you don't know sometimes when things will crater in one sector or another.
Right.
And in that case, I remember if you held on to a diversified portfolio, whether
Hmm.
it was a mutual fund or your own list of stocks, you did okay.
Yeah.
But there were a lot of people, sadly, that owned a lot of bank stocks back then. And if you owned certain bank stocks, and I remember I owned one, and I thought, it's dropping, it's dropping, it's dropping. And I finally just said, there's a line in the sand. If
Hmm.
it goes below 25, I'm gone
Yeah. Yeah.
because it's not acting like it should be. And
Hmm.
even though I might be selling at the low, an individual stock may not ever recover.
Right.
And that stock never did. It went
Right.
down to $1 and it was gone.
Yeah.
And so I always caution people, that's why you don't want to, don't bet on one thing or one stock. Imagine, back in, the 80s or 90s, Xerox,
Hmm.
Polaroid, Woolworth Kmart was a major, store,
Hmm.
and they're not with us anymore.
Right. Right.
So, so with individual stocks, be careful. But
Hmm.
with the market, you're absolutely right. Imagine that '08 thing. '08 was not a good year, but the worst of it happened in September.
Hmm.
By March, it bottomed.
Hmm.
So imagine when we think back to that time, it seemed like, oh my God, went on forever. But sometimes these markets are over pretty quick.
Yeah.
Now they always it you go up slowly and come down, unfortunately very quickly and panicky.
Yeah.
But you're right. And imagine if were out of the country or out of not paying attention for 6 months, you would have just said, oh well, that was, you
Yeah.
know,
That's kind of my way of going about the investments because I can't do anything to change the markets. And it's like the only thing I can do, as you mentioned, is kind of control my emotion. Well, money has a good way of tugging on that heartstring and that panic button, in the internal panic button. I know in my logical brain that the markets will go up. And I will basically look at my stuff. Yep, that's the change that happened. Oh, not as good as last year, but still went up. Oh, it went down a little bit. Fine. I still got X amount of years left to work. That's fine. It's just how it's
plugging
going to
away,
be.
keep putting a little bit away every month
Exactly.
and you're not worried about it.
It,
And
exactly.
we had actually one of my first clients was a lady that just did not care at all about markets going up or down. She just cared about her income because
Yeah.
she had enough money. She wanted to give it away.
Hmm.
Every month she was giving money away. And and we didn't sell anything. We just let it go.
Yeah.
But at the end of the year, we were measuring performance, and there were, of course, the accounts that we were moving in and out of, and then there was LOEs. And of course, who was outperforming everybody? The one
Eloise.
we weren't doing anything. It was, and we used to call her we called it the strategy of benign neglect.
I love it.
You know,
I
and
love it.
sometimes, and actually Jesse Livermore, of course, I referred to him earlier, who was a great trader. He always said he made most of his money from sitting, not from
Interesting.
trading.
Huh.
And
Interesting.
so you get in a good thing, you get in the market and you sit and let
Yeah.
it.
Yeah. That kind of luck reminds me of friends of mine who have no knowledge nor understanding of like fantasy sports. Now, I'm one of those people. I don't really care for fantasy sports, but I think it was my sister-in-law. She got into a fantasy football league and she won. And she's like, I don't know any of these people, and she won just from picking random. I like their uniforms. This looks cool. That name's nice. Just that's all they did. No, no knowledge, no research, nothing. And she won the league. Then the year after, she's like, oh, that was really fun. I'm gonna start researching. Bottom of the barrel.
That's it. That's it.
You
No,
started caring.
my sister runs this pool. It's like a single elimination pool where
Yeah.
you pick a team every week, but if you lose, you're gone.
Yeah.
And
Oh,
so at
okay.
the end of the year, invariably, whoever wins that pool is from England or France or from Yugoslavia. And they don't know anything about football. And they're
I
just like
love
your
it.
sister. But what I would say is that I guess I compare it to is we all get lucky at times,
Yeah.
but that is why we stay diversified. Whenever they have these contests, sometimes in the paper where they have the dart throwing,
Hmm.
they have the guy throwing the dart, and then they compare it to investment managers
Hmm.
of who can pick the best stock. And invariably, the dart wins.
Uh-huh.
It's
Yeah.
random luck. But if we're buying a diversified portfolio, then you're not dependent on the luck as much. You're going
Yes.
to accidentally, everybody will get a little bit of NVIDIA if you had a diversified portfolio.
Yes.
And so, yes, somebody will just buy half their portfolio in NVIDIA and good for them.
Yeah.
But most of us buy that diversified, group of stocks.
Yeah. That realism is really important. Just that nice foundation is really important. So for your book, now, did you have to have people going through helping you with research, making sure everything was spot on, like certain details? Did you have kind of a group of people helping you out?
Yes, actually, the publisher was really good at that. They had
Oh,
this fact
awesome.
checker, and
Nice.
I have a lot of history. I had a lot of quotes in the book from different, from investment people, from religious people, from, all just kind of funny, like, no, that's connected.
Yeah.
And so they had a fact checker that go through everything, thankfully, because I am not a detail guy. Like that 22%, I thought it was 25%,
Hmm.
but they corrected, every all the details and got all the quotes right. And the publisher did an amazing job. It took several months to go through it because I have a lot of stories. I brought a lot of history to it.
Good.
And so that was a real helpful thing. And they footnoted everything too, which I was amazed by. So
That's kind of nice. That's
it
really
is
nice.
not a textbook. The only thing
That's great.
they couldn't check on is my stories. And so did I exaggerate here and there? Maybe, but in general, they were. I did have a couple of friends say, "Well, wait a second, I was in that game too." I was talking about a basketball game that we were down like 94-24, and the coach kind of called a timeout. And this part, what happened, he looked at me and he said, I'm furious. The other team still has their starters in, and we should just walk off the court. What do you think, Mick? And why he asked me, I have no clue. And I just said, well, how about let's try to hold them under 100?
Yeah.
And so that was the crazy next few minutes was, of course, he had me sit down because I was terrible. But uh, but he put the starters back in, and the final score was 99-28.
All
And
right.
we charged off as if we had won the Super Bowl. And the other team, they're throwing stuff at us. The fans were furious. And that the lesson there was relative victories.
Yes,
You
relative
know,
victory. I like that.
that in that game, will and everybody who was part of it thought we felt like we won,
Yeah.
even though we got crushed. But
Hmm.
we won in that moment, and that so much in investing is to win the little game, not
Yes.
worry about the big game.
I like that. It's a good perspective. It's a good, really nice, healthy perspective, especially on something you can't control like the market. It really
Exactly.
does. It makes a lot of sense. Now, can you talk to me about your other publications that you've gotten out, like with the Wall Street Journal and other things like that?
Most of the Wall Street Journal things have been interviews that I've been, quoted in or helped, in an article about. I had a cousin at one point that was writing different articles, and he'd ask me, well, why, what do you think of bonds or bond funds or things like
Okay.
that? And so I would be, kind of, helping in that article, or kind of responding to different things that were going on in the market.
Yeah.
Then I did try to write some in my LinkedIn. I published some articles also, and help people give perspective, and hopefully in a fun way,
Hmm.
kind of like in my book. I just feel like there's so much dryness out there when people talk about the market. It can put people to sleep, and not that you want to focus your life on money, but you just want to have some perspective.
Yeah.
And I always think it's like if you want to have a balanced life, you want to have a spiritual sense about you, you want to, be family oriented, and be able to be, with friends and have good relationships. But if you have no concept of money, that's going to
Right.
throw everything out of balance.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
So my thought is that to give people a little bit perspective of, you don't have to do much, but
Yeah.
just do a little bit, and that will give the rest of your life good balance.
And I love that you say you're driving this book with stories to correlate with and combine with the actual factual knowledge that is good, tips and practices with money, because money can be kind of boring at times when you think about it. The market can be very dry. So this is a guy who teaches safety talking. There's a lot of very dull, dry, irritating, and it's like, why bother safety topics that I get to teach about? So I get to throw all sorts of stories in there, and it makes it at least somewhat memorable and interesting so they can connect okay, well, Ryan said to do this to this ladder so I don't fall and kill myself. Cool. That's what I want to do because this happened to this guy. Yes, exactly. So throwing people learn better with stories,
Absolutely.
especially with dry topics. So I
I,
think you've approached that the best way you can.
I completely agree with you. And that's how I've learned. And I was not a great student with textbooks. And it was really those professors that could tell a story that would get me interested and excited about something.
All the time, all the time. I'd go from having a snooze fest of a classroom, a class, to having people engaged. Once you start, being animated and telling something, funny or interesting or sometimes graphic and horrifying, it's that attention getter that gets them to go, oh, maybe this stuff actually is important to listen to. Yeah, maybe a little bit. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah,
Exactly.
no, I really like that you've attached stories to it. That's to me the best way to go about it. But so when did this book come out?
It actually came out in late 2023. So it's been
Awesome.
out a little while, and
Yeah.
kind of had a slow, I'm not an author people knew about. So it's kind of had a slow runway, but it's gotten some interest here and there, and I
Good.
think I've had a lot of fun talking about it and talking to people like you,
Yeah.
and whether the book takes off and becomes a bestseller or not is almost, that would be fun, but to me just as fun or important to me is getting this message out.
Yeah. I
And
agree.
if that helps somebody along the way, that means everything to me.
Absolutely. Getting the good information out to people who actually want to learn it and build a foundation of wealth for their future. That's really what we want to do here. No more misinformation. Hopefully.
Or
Hopefully.
at least a willingness to ignore it. To turn, that's a time to turn the
I like
station
that.
when you hear someone worried about predicting the next recession or something. That's been going on for the last 2 or 3 years, I think.
Yeah, I think I've heard it too. I'm just like, you know what? As long as I have money in the bank, I have an income, I manage my budget monthly, we're fine. I can have food on the table, I have gas in the cars, roof over my family's head. We're doing okay. We're doing okay. That's the big important ones.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And there's the old expression, if you say something long enough, eventually you'll be right. I was looking at somebody
True.
who said, "Yeah, I predicted the 2008, recession that you talked about."
Uh-huh.
And then I looked back at his, writings, and he had been talking about that since 1998.
Jesus.
And I'm thinking, well, yeah, eventually something bad will happen, and you say, see, I told you."
I was right. You're not a Nostradamus, dude. It's just you just happen to be
None of
very
us are,
patient. Yeah, you just have to be very patient. That's
except for
funny.
your. I don't know if it was your sister predicted the fantasy football. She had some.
She probably has some clairvoyance in her. Who knows? I have no idea, but I think she just got lucky, to be honest with you. It's just so funny how that works. Like, I know nothing. I like this. And then she wins. It was hilarious. Absolutely hilarious. Now, I know you just had this out in late 23. Future books, or are you going to really just continue marketing your one book here?
I think mostly I've been enjoying marketing it, but one of
Nice.
my friends was saying, you got a thing going with this mellow concept. Maybe you ought to try like mellow your politics or mellow your dating life. And so I'm not sure if this is a chicken soup for the soul kind of thing, but anyway, we'll see. Right now I'm not doing anything else.
And that is okay. It's almost always when I ask about a second book, they're like, "Oh yeah, I've got something." So it's kind of nice to hear like, "Nope, I'm going to focus on my one book and get that just as much publicity as I can and really push that." The cool thing is, over time, if you've got more stories you remember or you come up with, you can always come up with a second edition or something and just
Exactly.
that kind of thing. If you want to spice it up a little bit, that would be that's what I've heard people doing in the past. So.
That's
But
pretty cool.
yeah, good times. But so I'm sure everyone wants to know where they can get copies of your book. So where can they get copies and order your book from?
The easiest place, of course, is Amazon. It's on Amazon and Barnes and Noble and any of the major the sites there, and it's in all different categories. For fun, I did the audiobook version too. But
Oh, nice.
if if you're not sick of my voice, then you could do that also. But that was in itself was an amazing experience
Yeah.
of trying to read and I've heard the guy that at the studio was saying he's seen people read 6 hours straight. Some of these professional
Mm-mm.
book reader, for me, hour and a half and I was done. And then
Yeah.
so it took me 4 or 5, times to get the thing done.
Yep. I'm with you. I'm doing my audiobooks right now for my two books, and I have to do it in about half hour to an hour stints. And then but I'm doing everything myself. So half hour stints, come back, do some more. It just seems to be I'm happier that way.
Yeah.
I'm fresher that way. I've got more zeal for it after that. But anyway, Mick, this has been awesome talking to you. Thank you so much for coming on and chatting with me about your book. And I really had a good time having a conversation with you.
Thank you, Ryan. I really enjoyed talking with you too, and really appreciate the opportunity.
Absolutely, absolutely. All right, guys, I hope you guys really enjoyed this, learned some stuff, and definitely go pick up Mick Hyman's book, Mellow Your Money: How to Surf the Market and Build Wealth Without Stressing Yourself Out. There's enough stress in life already. You got to go and get this thing. All right, I hope you guys have a great rest of your day. And as always, stay mighty and keep reading.